Hi friends, I'm Laura, and welcome to my podcast, Her Journey Towards Change. This is a faith-based life coaching podcast for women who, like me, are on a journey to live the best life possible. And then something happens, something unforeseen, and everything changes. Life feels foreign and you feel stuck. And it's difficult to move forward, and reaching out can be hard, right? Believe me, I know. If this is you, this podcast is for you. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I know who does. God wants more for us, for you and for me. You were created to live your best life. So I hope you will go on this journey with me to a more positive perspective and take those hard steps together through her journey towards change. Together, let's break through the barriers which are holding us back from achieving what God has called us to be. So let's go, and I hope you will go on this journey with me. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You are listening to Her Journey Towards Change, a podcast where our vision is to empower and encourage women to move forward while realizing their unique strengths and God-given talents to align with the biblical perspective and direction of what God wants for her. And today is Tuesday's Talk. And what I do on a Tuesday's Talk is I bring a guest on and we talk. So today's guest is Elisa Preston, and she's with me right now. Hello, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Good. I want to go ahead and read your bio to everybody, if that's okay.
Sounds
Okay.
great.
Elisa is a writer, podcaster, Army wife of 15 years, dog mom of 8 years, and a girl mom of 6 years. She writes and speaks about seeing the praiseworthy side of our daily struggles, especially when it comes to how God sees us and how we see ourselves and how we see our closest people. She's written 3 small town novels. Ooh, I can't wait to talk to you about that. She's written 3 small town novels about love and family, all available on Amazon. She's an avid cookie baker and eater, and she'd spend every day in the sunshine if she could, and so would I. She lives in Western New York with her family, and I'm so glad that you are here today. How are you?
I am so happy to be here. I'm well. It is sunny today. It's not always sunny in my part of the world, and we've had several days of sun, so I'm a happy camper.
Well, same here. It's been really, really pretty the last few days. I actually went and got my first COVID vaccination today.
Yay! Congratulations.
You had yours?
I have not. My parents have. They're all in the process of either a first one or about to have their first one or their second one. So we're all on our way.
Sounds good to me. I also, while I was out, I thought, well, I need to go have some blood work done. So I just meandered on over and got some blood work done. And so I came back and, hopefully all is good. I can't wait. I can't wait to stop wearing the masks. And
I know my daughter today, just over and over. I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired. And she is not a complainer, but she's almost 6. She's just ready to be done with it, So, but we are getting there. We are almost done with it. I am hopeful and so grateful for progress and moving forward.
Oh my. So I wanted to talk to you today about your podcast. It's called Praise Through It.
Yes.
And I love listening to it. You just have this adorable voice.
Oh, thank you. That's what I hear. It's very peaceful.
It is. And I've been listening to you when I'm in bed trying to fall asleep. So it's just great to just fall asleep to listening to the encouragement that you offer on your podcast. So I appreciate that. So can you share a little bit about the concept of your podcast and what it's based on and who might benefit from it?
Absolutely. So the title of the podcast came to me about a year and a half to time just goes right by, doesn't it? I think
Yeah.
more like 4 years before I actually did it, when I had no idea what it meant. But I had a pretty traumatic birth experience when my daughter was born, and I almost didn't survive. I didn't meet her for a couple days, and I ended up having a hysterectomy. And so she was my first and only, and it was a lot to go through, and it was a lot to grow through. And I was running one day, and God just zap, and I just heard in my whole spirit, my whole self, praise through it. And your
Wow.
pain is not for you. And so from that moment on, I just thought, okay, well, what do you want me to do with that? And, a series of many steps and a lot of praying and reading and reflecting, sometimes with things that have nothing to do with postpartum, nothing to do with, what I talk about, but just moving my relationship with God forward. That led me to the podcast. And I love reframing. I was a counselor, I'm a trained counselor, and reframing is my jam. That's what I say. And so I love taking things that are frustrating or an old burden and just looking at them in a new way, because God gives us everything for a reason. And if he's working everything out for the good of those who love him and serve him, then there's got to be some good in what we do, and daily life can be hard.
Yeah.
And so, and I like practical things too. So seeing the praiseworthy side of our daily struggles just really fits with who God has asked me to be and what he has put on my heart.
Well, I thank you for sharing that story with us. I mean,
Yeah.
that makes all the difference on the background of what your podcast is about.
Thank you.
One of your most recent episodes is number 6, and it's called Flipping the Character Coin,
Yeah.
which I connected with. I've never heard of it before.
Okay.
I actually listened to this one twice because I wanted
Great.
to make sure that I didn't miss anything, because I need to work on what you're describing in this episode. So I was hoping that we could talk about that a little bit. Could you share the concept of what flipping the character coin is all about?
Sure. Yes. I'm so glad you enjoyed it and connected with it too. Flipping the Character Coin came from an idea I got when I was reading Dr. Caroline Leaf. She is a neuroscientist and she marries brain and Bible. And along with like pasta and sauce, brain and Bible is my favorite combination. And so she talks about switching on your brain. And so she talks about how in our genetic code, most of it looks the same, and our daily choices, to include our words, thoughts, and actions, switch on different things and switch on the positive side or the not so positive side.
Mm-hmm.
And so in thinking about that, I really dove deep in there and I thought, okay, well, what does this mean for raising my daughter? What does this mean for, being a good, nice, positive wife? What does it mean for interacting with coworkers that I might not always get super along with? And that's what I came up with, is flipping the character coin. So it's the idea that for every character trait that really, really bugs us, there is an opposite side to it that really is positive and enhances our life.
So when it comes to the character coin, now for me, I tend to see the not so good sometimes in people, like you say with the coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is that for you to do that, to practice it?
My husband would say that if it's a child, it's really easy, and if it's an adult,
Uh,
it takes a lot more work from me.
Same with me.
And I was an elementary school counselor, and I just likely have a lot more patience built in for children than I do for adults. But with practice, it's definitely gotten a lot easier. And it just was so important to me. Not only did it help me see other people in a different light and see other people in the light that God has created them in. I mean, that's one of the biggest things the last couple of years for me is if I'm made in God's image, so are they. And if they're made in God's image, so am I. And so, with practice, it's definitely gotten easier and it helps me see them with empathy and compassion. Also, it gives me the confidence to be who I am and be who God has asked me to be, no matter what the other side is giving me.
Right. Well, I can connect with it comes to, I no longer teach, but I worked with pre-K and Head Start. And I've worked with children as a child development specialist for over 20 some years. So I'm not doing it anymore, but you have to have a certain type of patience when you work with children. And you have to be able to know them well enough to be able to read them and understand them from where they're coming from on their age level. So there's a lot of things I miss about that, but I think I like where I'm at this point. But when it comes to adults, I don't read them as well.
Yeah, it can be so hard.
That's why this episode really connected with me. You also mentioned in the episode about when you were a school counselor and you were teaching pre-K and you were in Savannah, Georgia. Can you talk about that moment that you were mentioning in that episode and what that moment meant to you while you were teaching?
Absolutely. This pre-K, it was the only year I taught, and they are now visiting colleges, and it's, I can't believe how time goes like that, but it was so long ago. I still see this moment so clearly. His name is Oliver, and him and his friends, Declan and Morgan, they were always playing, always wanting to be the top. And they were outside and they were just arguing again. And so I brought Oliver in and I said, Oliver, buddy, what is going on? And he just looks at me deadpan. I just want all the power in the world. And I was like, don't we all?
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Well, that goes with what you were talking about earlier when it comes to working with coworkers. When I was the teacher and you would have assistants coming in and working with you, sometimes you just don't rub shoulders the right way. And it's nothing wrong that I've done or they've done. It's just that it could be a personality clash. And I remember, I think I've told this story before not too long ago in one of my other podcast episodes. I can't remember who it was with, but we actually it was so bad that we couldn't get along that I suggested that we take a personality test, and we had a coach come in, and we saw each other completely in a different light after we took that test. I was able to see her according to why she does the things she does, and her the same with me. So it made a world of difference. So
yeah, that's really wise. That was a great idea.
Well, it was one of those moments where I just hated going to work because it was so stressful. It was just a really stressful time of having to go to work and deal with that day after day after day. And it just, I don't like conflict. And I used to say a couple of weeks ago, I was an Enneagram 9, which is a people pleaser. But I recently took that test again. And I'm no longer a 9, I'm a 7 now. So
living on the fun side of things, are we? That's where my husband is.
Working on it. But all of my life I've been a people pleaser. And I think I'm learning in the right way, the loving way, to set boundaries and realize that, at the time of life I'm in right now, I need to take care of myself. So that's working out real well. So I know that we can all understand that what was his name again?
Oliver.
He was only 4, but do you think adults can have the same mindset and tendencies as a 4-year-old sometimes?
Absolutely. For children, one of the things I say regularly is children are unrefined versions of ourselves, of their parents, right? Yeah. So that's where the child is coming from. But the adults, we have our own expectations of how the world should work and how people should act toward us and toward each other. And so when we see other people not meeting those expectations, we go into that 4-year-old mindset of, well, that's not how it should be. This is how it should be. Let
Right.
me tell you how you should be. And we just get in trouble relationally and soul wise. That really impacts our spiritual health just as much as it impacts our outward relationships. So,
Right. So, can we talk a little bit about the difference between the two sides of the coin, like the domineering and the leadership side? And the coin isn't just limited to just those two sides, right?
no, definitely not. So, flip the character coin, take any character trait, and you can consider a positive side and a not so positive side. And the only reason I'm not saying negative necessarily is because sometimes those not so positive sides really serve us very well.
They do.
In the podcast episode, one example I give is a surgeon. I want a surgeon to be pretty arrogant when he's fishing around my body. I've had 5 major surgeries,
Oh,
and I'm
wow.
really glad that they have all been, they've all gone well. The surgeons have all been really confident. And when confidence crosses that line to arrogance, that's okay. If you're fixing something in my body, or, you're fixing my eyes, like I had
Right.
LASIK surgery. So, so that's one example. That's just one example. But one of my other favorite ones is if you have somebody who's really creative or curious, a lot of times that comes across as obstinance or disrespect. For a child, it'll be a lot of, but mama, or
Right.
how about this idea? you
Oh,
know, and in an adult, it'll be sometimes they'll be really nice to you and say, that's a great idea. I also thought da 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 da. Other times they just might not be. And so they might not be disrespectful or obstinate or rude. They just might be super creative. And the way it manifests itself and the way it shows itself just might not be what you prefer. But that doesn't mean that it is only crankiness or meanness. It could just be creativity.
right. And you also say that the characteristic traits, they have alter egos on each side of the
Yes.
character that exists and it exists in all of us, right?
Yes.
And you say when we see, well, I'm going to say negative side of the coin.
It's okay. You can. You can.
I don't know. I tend to sometimes I do see things black and white, either negative or positive, but I am like you. I'm not a Pollyanna, to where I'm
Sure.
always going around happy go lucky and always, but I do look at things always on the positive side. But you say that we should flip it. Can I give you some traits that maybe you can give the flip side of those? Okay,
Yeah.
say for instance, like I was talking about a coworker, but maybe it's a coworker that's always asking for attention all the time.
And that can be frustrating. Also, we're so grateful that they could make us laugh on a dime. So when we're having our really hard days, they are there to entertain us. And maybe they do ask for all the attention. Also, maybe they get us in tears, the laughing kind of tears, when we want to do the other kind of tears.
Right. What about the friend who is always late?
The friend who's always late. My friend who's always late texted me after she listened to the podcast episode and said, "Is that me?"
Are you kidding?
No, because she's one of my very best,
So she
closest
knew.
people. Yeah. But the friend who's always late, what I've come to really know and appreciate is the reason they're late is because they are 100% present where they are. And so that maybe she is late, but she won't look at her phone for anything when she gets to me, and in 2021, I think that's a real gift.
It is. I love that. I love that flip side of that.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
gonna have to. Of course, I think I'm the one that's late more than somebody always being late. For me, I think I'm always the one that's late. So hopefully they can look at me in a different light when it comes to that. What about someone who shares their opinion a lot?
And see, that was me. So, it's okay if you're always late because I'm always the one that shares their opinion real fast. I used to be, not so much anymore. But the person who shares her opinion really fast, we can also be really grateful that we know she's being honest and that fosters trust. And we will likely go to her when we really need to hash out a situation or we're not sure what to do, we're not sure really what the Lord's speaking to us at that moment. The always having an opinion friend is also probably a very honest friend.
Yes, that's a good one. I like that. So, what about the opposite of the one who's always late? What about the friend or family member who rarely shows up at an event or a gathering?
The one who rarely shows up and she seems to not be present, maybe we can remember that, you know what? Yeah, she's never physically here, but I get the most beautiful birthday cards. And she remembers the anniversary of a big time of grief for me, or when I got my dog and she sends me a card or a present for that. So
Um,
maybe they're not physically present, but maybe they're really present with words because that is more their strength.
so, basically, it's a lot of work on our part that we have. When we flip the coin, it takes a lot of effort to
It does.
be able to see, well, to not actually not see. What do you call the not the negative? How do you choose
Just
the
not so positive.
not
I
so
just
positive? Okay,
taking it
when you don't want to see the not so positive, it's really hard to not see that. So it's a lot of effort to not see that and actually, I feel like I'm talking in circles.
No, I get it. And
And
I
to
totally
see
agree.
the
Yeah.
positive side.
And you're totally right. And I figure one of the reasons I started thinking about this and started engaging in it is because, I sometimes can work pretty hard to try to control my environment, but that makes people around me really cranky and because it's not fair to them. And I can't control other people, but I can always work on myself. And I tend to be introverted anyway, so I'm always thinking anyway. So why not think about something that will make my life easier and, my little corner of the world a better place. So, and I think the more we do it, the easier it is. When I thought of the phrase that children are unrefined versions of ourselves, I felt like my parenting even flipped a switch, and when we can root ourselves on something solid and true, then it just becomes a lot easier to live in it.
Yeah, I get that. That's a great point. So, does this refer to our marriages as well? And, well, of course, like you said, raising our children. But can you explain how that works, especially in our marriages?
Absolutely, sure. So I can speak from experience, and everything I'm saying, my husband knows, and we're not shy about. So my husband is very outgoing. He has no problem talking ever. And I am just the opposite. I have a podcast, but that doesn't mean that I love to put my voice out there and all over the place. Before I did my podcast, I had to normalize hearing myself. I had to send Marco Polo videos to my best friend. Yeah. Yeah.
I still don't like hearing myself. So, and
Yeah.
my husband's the opposite of yours.
Okay. Oh, really?
He's the quiet one.
Okay.
And
So
I
for
do have a podcast. I have a podcast as well, but like you say, I don't always get my voice out there other than the podcast. So
yeah, it can be really strange to hear ourselves. And so we are so opposite in that way. And so, I would just be really annoyed. Like at home, I would just want it quiet. And there's just this incessant talking. And he just, which is nice because he wants to talk about his day and hear about his day, and who doesn't want a spouse who's ready to communicate?
right.
But it was still for a person who likes quiet, and he's military, so he's gone for long stretches. So I have these long stretches of being able to control the noise in my environment. And then he comes home and it's rowdy again.
Yes.
At the same time, I am so grateful that pre-COVID and someday in the future, when we go to large social gatherings, he'll always save my butt. I don't have to super worry about how and where I will engage. One of his best friends graduated from law school at Georgetown. And so we participated in the weekends activities with him because, they're so close to us. And there were so many social engagements, and Greg is in his glory. And I was really grateful for that because I could just have fun with my husband
Right.
and, just be really grateful for that. So, the same thing with the confidence and the arrogance. Sometimes I think, well, I know, we get frustrated if our spouse is showing arrogance when they know more than we do at a certain point or on a certain topic. But at the same time, we're really grateful that they're confident in that. And we want them to show their great, wonderful traits that we fell in love with. And, back eons ago when we fell in love with them, that's all we saw.
Mm-hmm.
Nitty gritty, daily grind, 15, 20 years later, like, oh, well, that looks different, than it did when it started, but it's still there. It's the same coin. It's just the other side, so that's what I think.
Yeah,
And
that's great. I love that. When you say this, the same grind, nitty gritty, we've been together. We just celebrated 38 years. So,
yeah, wow, congratulations.
so, yeah, it's been a long time. Like we feel like we've been together a long time, but
You have been.
he's still just as quiet as he was when I first met him. I mean, it's still like pulling nails to get him to talk. So
Yeah.
I'm the talker. So,
Yeah.
but you mentioned in episode 5, I
Mm-hmm.
think you said it was Dr. Caroline Leaf, who
Mm-hmm.
is a neuroscientist, and she
Mm-hmm.
talked about this as well. Can you share her thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the flip the character coin was kind of my own interpretation. And so she touched on the genetic code and how we switch things on and off depending on our choices. And so one of her books is called Switch on the Brain, and it has a matching devotional, Switch on the Brain
Okay.
in 365 days. And what that means is that by our words and our thoughts and our actions, that we can switch on these different pieces of our brain, whether it's optimism or pessimism or confidence or arrogance or all these different things. And so when I thought about that, switching on and off your brain or switching on and off these traits, that's what really got me started in it. So Dr. Leaf, she's brilliant. She marries brain and Bible. She is really great at taking these neuroscience concepts and breaking them down for people like me
Mhm.
who, I didn't do a hard science. I did social sciences as a counselor, but I love learning about the brain because I think that the more we know about the brain, the better we'll treat
Yeah,
each other and the more understanding of each other we can be.
yeah, I like that. That's true. So, this concept of flipping the character coin, it doesn't just apply to others. And I think we've touched on this, but it also works for ourselves. Um, can you share the concept of how that works for ourselves and like what are the goals we are looking for when we do this?
Absolutely. So, one thing, the number one thing to remember is that we were made in the image of God. So, if that's true, then every part of me was made in his image.
Yeah.
And then if we think about what Dr. Leaf says, we're switching it on and off. We're living on this earth, we're, living with other fallible humans, and we are fallible. And so our words and our thoughts and our actions are not, perfectly holy, but we're still made in the image of God.
Right.
And so we have been given labels our entire life. A lot of our negative self talk comes from, you know, things we've been told or images that we kind of internalized that
Mhm.
then made us think that we're not living up to this expectation that's completely man made. And when we think about that, I'll give you a personal example. I was called shy my whole life. I'm not shy. I just don't like repeating myself. And I only want to say things when I'm confident of them. And so it's not that I'm shy, it's that I'm a thoughtful observer first and a speaker second, most of the time. Unless it has to do with parenting or, a close relationship, I usually have a hot take. But most of the time, I'm not shy. I just don't want to speak right away. And so when we think of those labels that we've been given or things that, negative self talk that we can very easily engage in, we can think, okay, well, maybe this label came from this character trait that I displayed at this time, but that's really only because I'm XYZ. And when we flip the character coin on ourselves, part of it is we can understand that other people are seeing us through their own lens. So it's their own biases, it's their own frame of reference, their own perspective, which comes from their own life, their own upbringing, their own choices. A lot of times has nothing to do with us. And so if we can flip the character coin on ourselves, we can have a lot more grace and mercy with ourselves. And we can remember that we are made in God's image. We are his daughter first and foremost.
Well, let me ask you this, because it brought up a point in my life years ago where somebody told me, and I took it in a negative way. They said, just stop wearing your feelings on your sleeve. So how would you flip that coin?
I would flip that and say, okay, maybe I do wear my feelings on my sleeve and everybody knows how I'm feeling. Also, then I don't have anything pushed down and my compassion is right there in the, right out in the open. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, I took it the wrong way. I took it the wrong way because it wasn't a good conversation we were having. But at the same time, I've had years to think about it. And I appreciate that because I think I'm okay with wearing my feelings on my sleeve at times. There's times where, yes, I realize I need to pull back because some people don't understand it. But for the most part, I think I've got it together to where I'm able to share it a lot better. So I don't look at it anymore as something that's not positive.
I'm so glad. I think what you just said reminds me of something that I wrote for my next podcast episode, which is about introverts winning the space too. And that's this idea that in these conversations of this or that, wearing my feelings on my sleeve or keeping them all inside, we forget that A, there's a spectrum, and B, it all matters and it's all okay. We need people who are more reserved.
Yeah.
Because they will be in very different roles, very necessary roles. And then we need people who wear their feelings on their sleeves because they will also be in very important roles in this world. So it's not a this or that. It's just it's an and.
Yeah, that's a good point. So where can everyone find you on social media? And especially that one place that you really like to be?
I'm mostly on Instagram. That is my number one social. I'm in my 30s, but social media is not my jam. So I stick with Instagram because I think it's a very positive place and I love photography. So I can marry my love of pictures and words. So you can find me on Instagram, Elisa Preston, very easy. And then I am anywhere you listen to podcasts, praise through it. Right now, it's only every other week. So there, are only 6 or 7 episodes as of right now. But it's still a good amount. And if you could head to my website, elisapreston.com, if you sign up for my newsletter there, I do send a weekly blessing and you can read it or you can hear it. It's kind of meditative, but it's always a blessing on a different topic. So
you also, don't you have your speaking sometime coming up in May, right?
Yes, I am doing the Wives of Integrity conference, for which we don't really have a lot of information, except that it's run by Carly and Mike in South Carolina and Marriage Legacy Builders. And so there will be plenty of information on my socials in the middle of April when all that registration information is available.
Well, not to give too much away, what will you particularly be speaking about? So if there's some women that want to check into that.
My talk is called The Wife I Want to Be, and it is geared toward military spouses because I'm a military spouse, but it is applicable all across the board for sure.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great. So the last question. So in summary, how will flipping the character coin bring about a positive change? How do you think that once we start doing this, how
Mhm.
does it bring about that positive change? What does it do?
I think that you can never go wrong by trying to see another perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that God has made his kingdom full of color and full of perspective and full of differences for a reason. And I think we can never go wrong with thinking, you know what? Yes, this is what I see, but what am I not seeing? And
Right.
I think that's good for our hearts and our souls and can do the world only good.
Great. So how will it, last question, I lied. This is the last question.
That's okay.
How
Two-parter.
will, yeah, it is. How will it bring us closer to God doing this?
Kind of the same answer. I walking toward a relationship with the Lord and having him walk with you, compassion and empathy and kindness, grace, mercy, and the fruits of the spirit,
Mm-hmm.
they it's almost impossible for them to not infiltrate your system. And, if you're walking with him and you're walking toward him. And so if that's what you're doing and if that's part of your journey is you're working to have those fruits of the spirit and be the person that he's called you to be, then we can, and you're looking at him while you're trying to do those things, it'll do nothing but bring your heart closer to him.
Okay. Now, I was going to ask you this, but pod, your podcast is actually based, isn't it based on a scripture?
It is. It's based on Philippians 4:8.
Okay.
Yep. Brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, whatever is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. So, all about reframing and all about mindset.
You know what? This has been so uplifting, encouraging, and enlightening, and I truly appreciated you coming on today and sharing all of this.
I have loved talking to you. Thank you so much.
So, your next project is coming up in May. Nothing else other than your podcast. We'll start. I'll start. I'll put all the links in the show notes so everybody can start clicking on that and listening to you. And you're found everywhere, right?
Yes. Yeah. You can find me. I mean, if you search me, I come up at the top. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Elisa Preston that is doing these kinds of things. So I'll come up, just Google, and elisapreston.com is really easy. And you can always find me on Instagram. Until Easter, I'm doing a Lent devotion. So after Easter, if you feel like you want to go back and read 47 days of Lent reflections, feel free.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And maybe
Thank you so much.
you can come back after your engagement in May.
Yeah. Oh, anytime. Yes.
Sounds good. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you so much, Laura. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.